What's going on, guys? It's Turin here, and today, guys, I have a 2v2 match which is going to feature the Beastmen facing off against the Vampire Counts and the Empire. So this is actually a 2v2 game that I played with my buddy Black Iron, who's going to be playing the Beastmen over here with a bunch of spooky giants. We're actually going to be facing off none other than Onionese, who's going to be playing the Vampire Counts, and John Ton, who's going to be playing the Empire. So definitely a very, very fun game, and let's get right into the business. So as far as my army composition goes, I kind of have a bit of a mixture of the Gore Herds, who again are pretty good against lightly armored units, and they did get some pretty substantial buffs in the most recent patch. Most namely, their weapon strength was originally 31, and it actually got boosted up to 36, which is a pretty big buff. On top of that, these guys also do have the Primal Frenzy, which is essentially just the Frenzy. It does give them +4 melee attack, 8% charge bonus, and also speed and immunity to psychology, which is quite nice. So again, pretty resilient unit, and I like them quite a bit. Against the Vampire Counts, they can do well against skeletons, fodder, zombies. They will struggle against Graveguard, but again, that's why I mixed up Bestigor herds and kind of had a bit of a dynamic army here. And of course, when you're playing multiplayer, it's very, very important to kind of, again, diversify your roster, because you don't know if you're going to be facing off against the Empire, the Vampire Counts, or a combination of both kind of stacked on top of one another. So you definitely need to mix it up and be ready for all that's coming your way. On top of that, I do have a Bray Shaman with the Lore of Beasts and the Flock of Doom, and then I also do have a second Bray Shaman with Devolve. So it's actually pretty strong, especially against the Vampire Counts, who tend to bring ethereal units, or, even against like Empire infantry blobs like Flagellants and Halberds. It's going to be quite good. So I do have both of those, and it's pretty fun to cycle them. Definitely getting some good value out of that. On top of that, I do have the Ungor Raiders here, 3 groups, pretty decent against the Vampire Counts. I wanted to have some sort of a ranged tool to just focus down the Mortis engine, although he does have Manfred von Karstein on a zombie dragon, so Onionese can definitely do some zombie summons on top of my Ungor Raiders, which definitely make it very, very tough to be effective with them. In the back, I do have an additional group of Bestigors and Auxiliary. I have 2 Centaurs with great weapons and a group of Chaos Poison Warhounds. And of course, this group, like the Centaurs, for how cheap they are, like they can, when you have 2 groups like this with Poison Warhounds, they can actually do really, really well against Blood Knights and can do some pretty serious burst damage. So I really like those guys quite a bit. And also they do also have the Primal Frenzy right here, so they are immune to psychology when their leadership is high, so they're not going to get terror routed initially. And on top of that, guys, they are immune to vigor, so they do have the Living Saints ability. Obviously it's not going to be called that with the Bestigors, but really, really strong stuff. Really like that unit. And of course I do have big scary Morker over here. So for Black Iron here, he actually has a pretty interesting army. He has, it looks like, several lines of spears, and each of these giants is actually like being escorted by a spear regiment, which is pretty cool. On top of that, he does have a mixture of Ungor herds with Gore herds, and of course, in investing in 3 giants, which are very, very expensive, you're going to have a bit weaker, infantry. You're not going to be able to really afford Bestigors, and if you did bring Bestigors, your army would be quite small. But again, mostly fodder units in the back line, so definitely a lot of marbles put in the effectiveness of these giants. He does have Morker the Shadow Gave, and he also does have a Bray Shaman, the dual Bray Shaman with each of those. So definitely some devolving going to be going on, but the Empire player does have a very wide line, and it doesn't look like he intends to play that kind of blob game, so we'll see how effective it is. But also just taking kind of a topical initial look at the battle, this is going to be a very, very tough matchup for the Giants, because he has Halberds, and the Giants will do okay against the Tattersouls and the Flagellants, but they won't really break, and the Giants' terror mechanic won't be that strong against them. So obviously the Halberds and these guns here, and also the Steam Tank, are going to be pretty tough for the Beastmen over here to conquer. So without further ado, let's get right into the action. So right now I'm just advancing my main force to engage Onionese and the Vampire Counts, and Black Iron over here is going to engage the Empire. So it's going to be a bit of a cockfight. The Steam Tank is really, really solid in this matchup. It's definitely tough, and against the low tier Beastmen infantry, although it looks like even the regular Gore herds, I think it's just the Ungors who don't have, and it looks like they actually do have the Primal Frenzy as well. So looks like it's across the board in the Beastmen infantry. I actually never noticed that. So again, Manfred's coming over, doing a little bit of harassing. I did have some missiles, so if he did come too close, I could get a little bit of fire, but Ungor Raiders, kind of like Goblin Archers, they don't have the best range. They only have 115 range, actually. And, they're not the most powerful, so I'm not going to be able to do much damage to Manfred on the Dragon, but he does have these bats kind of scurrying around, probably looking to see if he can get in on some of these Ungor Raiders and do a little bit of damage. So in the front line here, we're about to engage with the Vampire Counts, and honestly, the Gore herds are really, really going to do well against the Crypt Ghouls. And also, of course, having the Bestigors in here, these guys are going to do pretty well for me. So those guys are engaging over here. You can see the Bestigors here are charging in. Obviously, though, for Onioneses, the Cryptors are going to do very, very good against the Bestigors, because again, Cryptors are designed to fight units like Greatswords and like Black Orcs, so very, very well played getting those guys in the appropriate engagement. So the Gore herds here, you can see they're taking some initial damage, but the Cryptors are also taking, quite a bit of HP damage, because these Gore herds have, 36 weapon strength, but they are poisoned, so that's something else to take into account. But the Cryptors definitely losing that initial engagement there. So over here, I do have all of my missiles focusing on the Mortis engine, and you can see even the low tier Ungor Raiders are actually able to keep that Claw of Nagash here, the Mortis engine, out of the battle, which is excellent. So definitely, would advise this in this matchup, bringing these guys. And then of course, I'm keeping most of my Centaurs and Auxiliary, because I figured my front line with the Bestigors and some of these other troops could, outclass the Crypt Ghouls and those other units. Of course, with the support of Big Papa Morkern here, who, hits pretty hard and does have poison himself, we're able to do pretty well. So the Ungor Raiders do switch over here. You can see a Devolve going off, which is pretty nice, doing a little bit of damage to Cryptors and also hitting these Cairn Wraiths that my opponent, Onionies, is keeping on Auxiliary. He does summon some zombies. I, wasn't doing much with my Cav, so I figured I would just use them to kind of help clean up this summon back here. And of course, I do have those Auxiliary Ungors as well as some Bestigors that were in reserve, and they're going to come in and help out a little bit. So over here in the front line, he actually does get a pretty good engagement and pushes back the Gore Herd. That was initially a terror route, but they're now broken. The Gore Herd's obviously not doing well against Cryptors, and the Cairn Wraiths do have armor piercing, but the Cairn Wraiths also took some pretty big damage from Devolve, so it's definitely not a lost case over here. So over here on the other side of things, these two Giants, they're having a little bit of trouble finding home. You can see the Halberds chasing them, but the Giant, it looks like, is pathing back to the back line, and this other Giant is just taking massive gunfire. And the Flagellants here, the Flagellants are very, very good against the Beastmen. I mean, they don't break, and they do pretty solid damage against lightly armored troops. They will struggle against Bestigors, but again, in investing in the Giants, he didn't really have enough money to bring those, but he does have a big, big firing line back here. You can see Big Papa Morkern trying to catch the steam tank, and he is pathing the Giants and the other units back here to try and kind of maybe pound the steam tank down or push back to these guns, but still, all that ranged fire is just doing excellent job, and you can see this Giant is just getting absolutely gatted down with 225 HP. If we look at the overarching battle for the Beastmen versus the Empire over here, the Spears here are holding up okay, trading somewhat, decently, but Sigmar's Sons are extremely resilient. They have 43 melee attack, 43 melee defense, and a lot of the Empire troops, and as well as these Empire Knights, are just going to kind of run rampant in the back line and are definitely going to charge some of these boys down. So Empire Knights, they're not the best infantry, and they have very low combat stats with only 30 weapon strength, 26 melee attack, and 26 melee defense. But still, against low-tier Beastmen troops coming in and getting some good charges with the charge bonus of 48, they can do some okay work, but they do get caught up on some Black Iron Spears here, and will definitely start taking some casualties, relatively inefficiently from these spears. So you can see Boris Todbringer, unfortunately, is doing a very, very good job sniping out our Bray Shamans over here. And the rest of the Beastmen line is continuing to fight pretty well. The Earthblood, though, from the Empire doing a very, very good job keeping them alive. And a lot of the low-tier troops kind of are allowing the Giants to get surrounded now, but a very, very good Flock of Doom from Black Iron on this big blobbed group. And you can see that Morkern and the other Giants are kind of pushing back here, realizing that there's a very substantial threat from these handgunners. So a very, very wild fight, but unfortunately, there still is some healthy Halberds and some healthy Flagellants over here. So pretty good fight, all around. Over here, you can, of course, see Boris doing a very, very good job of sniping out these casters, which, again, is one of the strongest tools that we have against those mass Empire infantry. So over here on this side of things, it's continuing to be a pretty pitched fight. It looks like Onionies is continuing to fly around with Manfred, summoning zombies, on top of my range units, doing a good job there. But a lot of his infantry line over here is starting to get crumbled down. You can see that the Bestigors and the other units are kind of working their way through, and now that we're getting some Chaos Spawn in here, they're going to obviously not do great against the Sternsmen, but they're going to start working them down, and the Bestigors, they hit like trucks. They have 42 weapon strength, so they will cut through the Sternsmen. And the Mortis engine is being perpetually zoned by those missiles. So very, very good stuff from the Ungor Raiders here, but again, he's continuing to fly around and summon zombies, and I didn't really have a lot of tools to stop him from doing so. So what I was doing is actually trying to split my Ungors into 3 separate groups, so if he does summon something, at the very least, it won't get all 3 of them. So over here, I am able to isolate the Mortis engine. I get a pretty nice surround here, and yeah, that looks like it actually can be poisoned, so it does have 38 move speed now, and the Centaurs, the great weapons, of course, being immune to Vigor, are not going to get tired. They're going to chase it down, they're going to punish it, and will absolutely kill it here. So things are looking pretty good on this end versus the Vampire counts. My Morkern here is definitely kind of leading his troops and is in pretty good shape. Of course, he does have regeneration. If you guys look at his stats, let's go ahead and pan over him here so you can see he does have that. And a lot of these Sternsmen and other units are in weak binding. And my missile line's doing a pretty good job poking Manfred down. You can see I split them into several groups here, and they're doing great work. And of course, Manfred coming in, trying to snipe my Bray Shaman, but of course he is supported by some Bestigors. And a lot of these troops here, the Bestigors are immune to psychology, so the terror mechanics of these Cairn Wraiths here aren't going to do much, but still they're in very, very good health, I think. Or those are actually, were those the Spears or the Cryptors? But anyways, we're finally starting to get these guys down. And a lot of times, Cairn Wraiths don't die unless leadership becomes an issue. So over here on the Empire side of things, the Empire with Black Iron and John Ton, it's a pretty wild fight. The Steam Tank, unfortunately, is still in really, really good health, and it looks like he did get some damage on it, but the Steam Tank can be healed with Lore of Life, which is a bit odd, but still, it's very cost-effective to heal Steam Tanks. So the Beastmen do have some troops coming back over here. They're taking some damage from the Steam Cannons, but of course, Boris, with the support of the Steam Tank, is easily going to rout these guys off, and you can see the Beastmen are running for the hills. So very, very tough situation so far. As far as the rest of the Beastmen troops, you can see Morkern over here, again, is usually one of the last dudes to be alive. I tried to come over and help out with some of my Chaos Warhounds and other troops, but he had so many Halberds Hybrids and Flagellants and things like that, I figured I might be able to try and snipe out the Steam Tank, because Centaurs are one of the best answers the Beastmen have against Steam Tanks. They're armor piercing, and it's pretty hard armor piercing. So they're going to get on that Steam Tank and hopefully be able to do some damage, but the Empire still has so much here. They have a bunch of spears and Flagellants, and they're really not at risk of breaking. They have an extremely healthy Boris Todbringer and perfect health, and of course they still have a Jade Wizard who probably still has enough for a few Earthbloods. Over here, the vampire counts are indeed collapsing for the most part. They do have some Cairn rates, but you can see the Flock of Doom doing a pretty good job wearing these guys down. They have some Cryptors and things like that. Big Papa Manfred is in pretty rough shape. He only has 800 HP, but very, very well played by Onion. He's kind of going after some of my routing units. It's a very safe play, and you're not really going to take any, damage in doing that. So obviously much safer than having him fight in this main engagement here. So the Cryptors and other guys are indeed crumbling. These Cairn rates do have critical binding with only 8 leadership, so they're probably going to tank below 0 relatively shortly. And also, they're all at their healing cap, so there's not going to be any more healing here. But still, the forces that I do have left in my Beastman army, including Morker, it's not that much. It was a very, very tight fight over here, and unfortunately, the Empire still has quite a bit. And one of the biggest issues being that Steam Tank. So I tried to get some good damage on this Steam Tank with my Centaurs. You guys saw that, and it was able to actually do pretty well. I mean, we brought it down to 2,500 HP from about 3,400, but still, it's still fighting, and he has a bunch of Flagellants. But you can see Black Iron does have some spears coming back in, so they're going to be able to get in here and hopefully take out a few more of these Empire Knights. Maybe do a little bit of shock damage to these spearmen, and also his Morker is able to summon some Chaos Spawn, which is really, really nice here. Definitely giving us a little bit of hope in this this kind of somewhat grim situation. And you can also see Morker, the Shadow Gave over here, is in a pretty pitched fight with Boris Todbringer, but Boris is not taking no for an answer. He's getting in there, and of course he does have regeneration of his own, and doesn't look like he's near his cap quite yet. So he's still getting a little bit of healing, and Morker does get routed off the battlefield. So very, very tough situation, but very, very well played by both Black Iron and John Ton over here, having a very, very pitched fight. So as far as the Vampire Counts battle, you can see they just have some Cairn rates left. Some of my Bestigors are going to get in there, but the Steam Tank is now doing a little bit of crossfire, shooting at some of my Bestigors, and let's see how much ammo. So it still has, about 40% of his ammunition, which is going to be really, really tough. But thankfully, these Cairn rates, it looks like they're trying to run to their allies. Their leadership is in the negative, so they're going to start crumbling here, which is quite nice. So I did get some Centaurs back from route, but they're very, very tattered. I think like 1 or 2 volleys from that Steam Tank will indeed be enough to kind of take those guys out. So let's go ahead and take a look at the overarching kind of theme of the battle. So I do have some troops coming back. The Vampire Counts don't really have anything left. These guys are definitely going to crumble here in a moment. They do have Big Papa Manfred, though, which is very, very tough. And again, flying around, he can probably still has a few zombie summons. It would be pretty nice that if in replays I could actually see like how much Winds of Magic he has left. I think that would be really cool for like, casting and things like that. So right now I'm just kind of regrouping my forces, trying to get everyone together. They're pretty tattered, though, but on that same note, I do have an upgraded Flock of Doom, and we're able to hit all of these Empire troops, which is going to be really, really powerful. So that was definitely a pretty good situation there that my opponent did bunch up for that. But still, my infantry corps is very, very weak. They're steady. Most of them are either shaken or steady, which is not a good situation. So the Centaurs right now, I tried to get a little bit of engagement here and just kite around, but unfortunately they just broke due to being extremely beat up. And Beastmen don't have the highest leadership across their units, but some of those other Centaurs over here are able to get a pretty good engagement here and lay the smackdown on some of these handgunners. But they're still steady despite that, and very, very good, because these handgunners would certainly be pretty good against shooting against these Vestigor herds. So over here, some of these Cairn rates are taking a little bit of damage. I do have my Ungor Raiders who've been good performers this game. Only 11 and 11 kills on each of them actually, but still did a good job poking at Manfred, zoning out that Mortis engine, and they are now crumbling these Cairn rates. So right now, the last of the Beastmen infantry are going to charge in, and Bestigors will just absolutely shred against these. Will shred these Flagellants. And you can also see some Chaos Spawn coming out from the pits of hell. Definitely going to do some good work fighting against these Tattersouls. So pretty good engagement situation just in terms of the pure matchup here. But again, the Empire player has so much kind of a unit density, and Manfred is also still here, and Manfred comes in again with his armor piercing and his terror, and the leadership on my Bestigors is low enough that they're not going to be immune to psychology, and they are getting terror routed. Also, those Cairn race, they still didn't crumble, so they're coming in, getting a nice rear charge on me and able to kind of collapse my line here. So right now, I mainly just have some Chaos Spawn, and then Morker is also still in here fighting, if I'm not mistaken. He's in pretty good shape, and I do have some Raiders shooting in, which is pretty nice, but their leadership is pretty low. They're wavering. My Shaman has been pushed off the battlefield. I do have an additional group of Bestigors and some Spears, but they're all shaken and probably honestly won't last much longer. And unfortunately, those handgunners, somehow, it looks like I was able to shatter one group, but he did have a second group. And guys, this is really kind of the nail in the coffin, is that Boris Todbringer is back, and he is in perfect health. He has not taken any damage, really, and what damage he did take, he regenerated. And of course, Manfred is continuing to fly around and continue to be a pimp. So Very, very good fight so far. It was close, on all ends. But the Beastman and Morker continuing to fight over here. Morker obviously is one of the more competitive lords, I would say. So he's going to be able to put up a fight here for quite some time. But still, with Boris Todbringer beating down on him, he's not going to last that much longer. So I was able to summon another group of Chaos Spawn using the Spirit Essence of Chaos, and I do get another Flock of Doom. So very, very good stuff, doing a little bit of damage, but it's still not enough. He still has so much stuff, and as far as just the raw unit density of mine, they're all shaken, which is really, really problematic when there's two scary flying lords around. Because Boris does cause terror, as well as Manfred's coming in and kind of cleaning up on the flanks back here, going after the Raiders. Very, very well played. So at this point, it's pretty much over. Just some Chaos Spawn fighting. So I just want to say really well played to everyone in that game. Super awesome. Well played to Onionese, John Ton, as well as Black Iron. It was super fun. So as far as the breakdown, I would say this Beastman army did pretty well against the Vampire Counts build. We were able to zone out the Mortis engine and kind of, essentially survive and essentially push them back. But still, Onionese did a very, very good job of keeping Manfred alive and continued to just be a perpetual threat. He was microing him extremely well. I also liked how well some of the Cairn Wraiths did in the middle of that engagement. Of course, they did get crumbled eventually, but this was a very, very cool build. Very different, not something that you traditionally see in a competitive sense, but perhaps it could be. I'd like to kind of experiment with Crypt Ghouls and maybe some more Cairn Wraiths in multiplayer. So very, very good build from Onionese. And John Ton's build was very, very optimal against what he was fighting. So I think that my Bestigor army with these guys would have been a better matchup. So I think in retrospect, Black Iron and I probably should have switched sides, because I think the Giants would have been a little more effective against the Vampire Counts. Granted, you do lose out on the terror, but still most of these units were Flagellants or immune to psychology anyways, or unbreakable. So you probably should have switched. I think the Bestigors would have performed pretty well against the Flagellants, but still, the Flagellant army really, really was solid here. They were able to lay the beatdown on a lot of these low-tier Beastman infantry, and then that allowed the Halberds and the guns to really just have a field day on the Giants. But still, these Giants racked up 122 kills, and this one was a big performer, but you can obviously see this one and this one got gunned down pretty hard. So, but again, very cool army from Black Iron. You don't see a lot of people using the Giants with the Beastmen, so definitely a bold move, and it ended up being pretty tough with all the missiles and the steam tank and things like that, but it was pretty well fought over there as well. So, very well played to everyone. Just an awesome match. Thanks again for everyone for playing. Hope you guys enjoyed this multiplayer cast, and more content coming soon.